All right, hey, thank you all for joining me. This week was a productive week, first week of session. I directed the floor leader and the assistant floor leaders to have all the bills ready before session, and it worked out very well. I want to applaud them for their work of getting all the bills assigned, save one or two, so we could actually have committee work this week. I authorized meetings on Wednesday for Public Safety and Health and Human Services because of their workload. They had 130 plus bills each, I believe, or somewhere thereabouts. And we had very productive meetings. Want to thank my colleagues, both Republicans and Democrats, for allowing me to fast track the open meetings reform. I think that will be very helpful, and I anticipate and know the House is going to try to get that done as quickly as possible as well, so people can have public meetings and still be conscious and helpful in this COVID time. So I'm excited to be here. I'm not going to give you a long-winded overview. You all saw what happened. I'm going to take your questions, so go ahead.
We've got some at home if we want to start there. Okay, Barbara, you got first. So you'll have to ask Barbara Hobrock.
I'm going to have to what? Barbara Hobrock, am I supposed to recognize her? Okay, Barbara?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing this. Can you speak to the draft law report? It had some pretty scathing criticisms of Tempore's team spending, and also included as an equally scathing response from John Budd and Mike Mason.
Yeah, Loft report is exactly what we tried to set up, you know, an independent evaluation and fiscal transparency. So proud of the work that Loft did. It was not at my direction, it was at the direction of the Loft committee that we assembled. I've read through the report and the response. I think that we'll digest it, we'll get through it. I saw the response. I was disappointed in some of the language of the response, but also have deep respect for those gentlemen, and we look forward to trying to get to the bottom of it.
Where does your caucus stand right now on managed care? I know it's quite controversial, at least in healthcare communities.
Yeah, it's the most divisive issue at the state capitol. It has been for a couple of years. My caucus is fairly evenly divided. I personally am agnostic on the delivery system as long as we can try to control cost and also ensure better health outcomes. The health outcomes in Oklahoma are unacceptable, and to expand Medicaid, as the voters did through State Question 802, and not to demand better health outcomes would be a mistake. So to whatever delivery model gets us to some assurance on the cost side and really drives health outcomes is where I'll be. My caucus, like I said, is you've heard from them individually. They've put out their own statements. They're pretty evenly divided.
Do you expect funding for Medicaid expansion and then funding for managed care to be packaged together? Would that be your expectation?
You know, that would be yet to be determined how it proceeds the process. We know that about $164.8 million to pay for the expansion, plus about a $50 million startup cost on managed care. Just practically speaking, I'll have to cede to staff attorneys of whether or not we can package those in the same bill for single subject purposes. But as a matter of practical implication, yes, the funding streams would probably go side by side since we're both dealing with it. But too early in session to tell exactly how that will proceed.
Can you talk about your reaction to the managed care contract announcement last week? And then also, you said you're agnostic about the delivery system, so what would that mean for bills like Senator Sanders that are trying to stop Moderna from going to a managed care platform?
I heard everything except Senator who?
Senator Sanders.
Okay. So my response to that is we're going to let the process work. So if it goes through committee and goes to the floor, we'll live with the will of whatever the majority of the institution wants. I'm one of 48 votes, or one of 47 right now, votes. I have voted for managed care in the past. I voted for the ABD population pilot program, and I believe one other version of managed care. I think there's some upside to it in that, as a former vice chair of appropriations and someone who's intimately involved in appropriations still, having an unknown budget year after year after year on Medicaid, and one of the fastest growing segments of our budget is Medicaid. Having some control of costs, so a capitated rate, was attractive to me from that standpoint. If you look at these RFPs, I think they're, from my limited knowledge on them, they seem to be well thought out. The problem in my mind, or the question I have, is on the risk corridor part of it, and how much does that expose the state to some additional expenses? So that mutes my, or at least dampens my enthusiasm a little bit for it. But they are driving toward health outcomes, and I've got to applaud that. Senator Standridge's bill will, if it's heard in committee and heard on the floor, we'll give it a fair hearing, figure it out. I say we'll give it a fair hearing if it comes out of committee and if the majority of the chamber wants it.
The governor's budget included the $300 million that he wants in the Revenue Stabilization Fund. What chances do you think that will actually make it through in the House and the Senate? Kind of different parties sometime, and maybe that 300 total? Do you think there'll be some savings that might be close to that?
You know, there's a difference in where we start from the 8.2 versus 8.4, so there's a little bit of just making sure that we're speaking from the same sheet of music. And I have some questions that I want to ask of the governor and the speaker. I'm not prepared on behalf of my caucus to go out and say exactly where we're going to land on that, but we're open to that discussion. Whether or not it actually comes to fruition at the end of the day is a hard guess sitting here in week one.
House and Senate announced last week that they were going to mandate masks be worn by the public and staff in hallways and places where you can social distance. There's been a lot of criticism on social media about a lack of enforcement of that, particularly yesterday. There are people sitting in the hallways. What are you guys doing to enforce mask wearing in the building?
You know, that is a rule that both protocols that both the House and Senate advise. I strongly encourage people to respect their fellow man and woman and try to follow those protocols. It puts sergeants in a difficult spot. I was approached by a member of the minority caucus who complained about that yesterday, and I directed the sergeants to try to intervene. Compliance is hard to come about when you're trying to exercise the constitutional right of being up here and redress your grievances with the government. So we're trying to handle it, but we're handling it right now with kid gloves and not trying to have, get troopers and others involved in accosting people who are not compliant. But I strongly encourage that you follow the rules in place to be able to respect the health of others in the building. I was aware of it, I saw it, and I tried to address it, and we didn't address it perfectly, but Janelle, I think one of the things that you've got to at least give us some credit for is you've seen tremendous compliance on behalf of the leadership team of the Senate. You've seen very good compliance on the floor until they sit down at their desk. And part of our protocols are if you sit at your desk, you can take your mask off. We've consulted with health experts in the past and currently about what is safe and are we properly distanced and do we have enough airflow and all of that. And so I'm confident and I'm proud of the way the members handled it. We had some members of the public who chose not to comply, and we're trying to get greater compliance there.
I have a couple of questions that only I ever going to ask. You have some new procedures related to striking the title. What is the purpose of that, and how do you think it'll work out?
Yes, we do have the new procedures in place requiring a majority signatures of the committees in which the title was stricken. And if it was doubly assigned and it was stricken in the first, it would have to get both. That's an important stopgap. What my purpose and the reason I support it is we had too many bills where people would strike title and then everyone would just vote yes because they knew they had another look at it. Then you'd get to the floor and you'd say, members, this bill passed unanimously out of committee. All I did is restore title. So I was trying to get committee chairs to be more reluctant to strike title, create more work on the back end if you did that. So we would minimize how many times we strike title because far too often in my experience at the Capitol, striking a title and then coming back with the identical bill with the only thing you do is restoring title. I see that too often. I want us to take it more seriously.
Senator Weaver has called them COVID casualties, bills that were passed in the Senate last year in particular, but then didn't get heard because of the way last year. As you have looked over the bills, do you see a lot of those, and might that expedite this session because some of that work has already been done?
I'm a purist. We're in the 58th, not the 57th. They get started over, and so just because you had success last session does not mean that you'll have success this session. Obviously, if the more familiar members are with it, the higher likelihood probably that it will advance, but they're also more familiar to ask the right questions to kill a bill too. So no, I don't think there's no directive from the pro tem of the Senate that, hey, if it got through last year, it needs to get through quickly.
Mr. Pro Tem, I just thought I'd ask you, and I understand if you don't want to comment, but not sure I had heard or seen censure of a member before, and Floor Leader David, revealed that to me today, and I just didn't know if you had any comment or anything about. It sounds like there's going to be a good working relationship moving forward, but I just wanted to give you a chance to talk about it if you want.
I appreciate your question, but I'm not going to comment on it.
I bet somebody $1. So.
I'm glad I can help you out.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a question from Carmen Foreman. Go ahead, Carmen.
Hey, Pro Tem. Thank you so much for your time. I actually have two, and the second one's really quick. The first one, I'm wondering about this people's agenda that the governor has been talking about. Is that something that you all are actually on board with, first off? And then, when are we going to see details of that?
So over the interim, there was a real commitment by all parties to try to come together on shared ideals, whether or not it was formalized and branded as the people's agenda during the State of the State. The things he talked about were exciting about moving Oklahoma forward. I look forward to working with the governor and the speaker. We've been having really productive meetings throughout the interim and have a lot of shared ideals. The Senate agenda, we will still have a Senate agenda, but we have not finalized it through the caucus process. COVID has kind of delayed our ability to have some meetings, but I anticipate you'll see that very shortly, and there will be a lot of overlap with the ideals expressed by the governor, but there will be some additional ones as well.
Cool. And second question, Stephanie Bice's seat is on the ballot next week on Tuesday. How confident are you that that will remain a Republican seat?
Very confident, but success is, I've been telling my team this because I saw it on a wrestling shirt and I liked it, and I've got to figure out who said it. But success is not owned, it's rented, and rent is due every day. So we've got to make sure we work extremely hard on that. I try not to do any electioneering here at the Capitol, but I'd be happy to talk to you about that at a later date.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I have one. The governor's team said that you guys, the speaker and yourself and some of the governor's team and the governor have had some meetings over the interim. Have you guys, how do you feel your relationship is with his office and with him going into this session? With
the governor? I think it's a strong relationship. We have a friendship, a genuine friendship. We've obviously had some disagreements, but you're going to have disagreements when you represent different branches of government. There's a genius in the creation of separation of powers that I'm thankful for. At times it's the bane of your existence, it's frustrating, but I have deep respect for the governor and for the speaker, and I think I have a very genuine friendship with both of them as well.
What did you think Monday when he praised last year's budget that he beat it?
I found it interesting, but I appreciated it. I stood up and applauded for it, so I appreciated it.
We're in the 58th, not the 57th, right?
We are in the 58th. Let's not look in the rearview mirror, right?
Yeah. We'll have to go with croissants down there. Can we talk a little bit about education and some of the governor mentioned some things in the State of the State? Talking open transfer, the discussion of a 3-year high, and maybe other elements of the funding formula. What's on the horizon there? What should we be watching for? And is there anything even more creative than those two in terms of education reform?
Well, I want to be clear that right now I'm speaking for Senator Greg Treat, not the pro tem of the Senate on
District 47.
District. Thank you. I appreciate you remembering that. I am a full-blown choice guy. So those reforms sound exciting to me, but they're not far enough for me. That doesn't mean I'm not supportive of them. I think they're good reforms. But now let me switch hats to the pro tem. We haven't, I don't know what the vote count is on either one of those measures. We're talking through those as a caucus and hope to have true education reform. We've made historic investments in education over the last few years. We expect results, and I think the citizens of Oklahoma deserve results.
Just as a little follow-up, we've seen ethics enrollment go up. I think everybody expected that, sort of, but then there's also been discussions of, you know, if this is going to be the largest or one of the largest school districts in the state, from a virtual standpoint, is there a need to look at how they're funded versus traditional public schools that maybe do some additional things? Where is the discussion on ethic and virtual charter schools in your caucus?
So I actually read with great interest your exchange with Ben Harris outside of the board meeting. I found it to be kind of an interesting take, and you actually went blow by blow on it. So thank you for sharing that information. The conversation, you know, we need to make sure they're held accountable, and there's legal action going on, so I try not to comment on anything in that arena. I don't know anything about it. I know what I read about it. But as far as giving parents options and flexibility, it provides an option, and we're still talking about formula changes. That's obviously, there's people on both sides of that equation that believe that they don't get enough for the services they do, and then others that believe that they're getting too much with the allowance for piano lessons and those type of things. So I hear it from every perspective of my caucus. We haven't had a thorough discussion on that yet this session.
Got one from participant Robbie Korth. Are you there? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Very good. Well, Trace kind of asked my question, but overall, you know, we've heard a lot of support from the governor's office and the House in relation to changing the funding formula. What do you think of changing sort of that 3-year high to the 1-year most recent year? Do you think that that's fair, and is that something that is likely to go through the Senate?
I'm not going to speak to the likelihood of going through the Senate until I have a better perspective. I don't want to ever mislead you that I know something I don't. I don't know the likelihood of that, but there is a lot of support for counting students that are truly in the classroom and not funding a student twice in 2 different districts. We're interested. You know, there's some complications with COVID. There's some school districts that typically have been seeing growth that have seen a decline in their student population. We're going to hear from all those school boards, all those superintendents, I'm sure, over the coming weeks. But I think, generically speaking, there is strong support to pay for the number of students that are truly in a classroom learning, and we'll see. But I can't give you a great perspective on how likely, the strong likelihood of it passing or not, because I just don't know the vote count yet.
Schools use that 2-year cushion to budget and sign contracts and stuff. I mean, they need to get into some assurances. I mean, how much time should they have to plan? I mean, they have to plan a year in advance for teachers and staff and buses and everything.
Yeah, there's about $3 billion that doesn't get spent, you know, every year. So the actual money we allocate, far too often we talk about how much is actually spent on children, and we leave out career and technology spending, we leave out concurrent and other parts of the equation that most states count. But we also forget that school districts hold back a lot of it. And for some, for good reason. Others are just building up a cushion and still complaining about the level of funding. So, hey, let's have conversations about it. I don't sit here and pretend to know all the answers, but I think we need to have a real discussion of how much do we actually allocate, not just what is spent every year.
What can we expect in the Senate next week?
I'm sorry?
What can we expect as far as the schedule next week?
It will be very committee heavy and very floor light, just like this week. We will see an intense amount of committee meetings, a lot of bills being heard, probably Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But as far as floor work, it will still be pretty slow checking in, all of that kind of stuff, just because we don't have the bills out of committee yet in great enough number to have a lot of floor work yet.
Unlike Sean, actually, I haven't read every bill that's been filed yet. Is there any particular legislation that you filed, that the topics you're working on that maybe hasn't made our radar?
First off, you should read every one of my bills that I file.
On it.
Yes, they're all tremendous policy, and we're working hard. There's a lot of my bills that are still some works in progress, to be 100% honest with you. I want to look at maternal and infant mortality rates. Oklahoma, unfortunately, was one of the leaders in the nation on the lowest or the highest infant mortality and maternal mortality. We need to value life at all stages. You'll see that. You're going to see me trying to look at commerce and how much money do we spend and try to starve things that are ineffective use of our taxpayer dollars and really feed and encourage those things that are bringing a good ROI. But I'll be happy as we move down the road and actually present these bills to have conversations with anyone who wants to on those pieces of legislation. A lot of my activity will be in helping run the caucus agenda that we'll be unveiling shortly.
Do you think that'll be next week? We're going to have the posters.
I hope to have a poster, but it's more verbose. You know, it was very concise the first time. This time, assuming the caucus, I have a broad range of the caucus as a working group that's been meeting on this for 3 or 4 months. That's put in a lot of work. It's a very good document, but it hasn't been accepted by our caucus, so I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be yet. I have a pretty good feeling. And it's not going to be as posterized, unfortunately. We may have to have a different poster for each part.
That's good.
Yeah. Multiple, we're going to have multiple. Aaron's the appropriate person to answer that question anyway.
I had one, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but I thought I'd ask. The State Department of Health offered vaccinations to lawmakers under continuity of government.
Mm-hmm.
A, can you say how many lawmakers accepted that? And would you feel comfortable saying whether you did and how it worked?
I'll answer your second one first. Yes, I have received my first dose, but I don't know how many other members took advantage of that. I take healthcare privacy seriously, and I don't know who did and who didn't.
How did your vaccination go? Was it easy? What would you say to people, you know, who are?
I strongly encourage people to get vaccinated. We need to get to a point where we can return to normal life, normal economic activity, and protect the most vulnerable in population. You know, just being honest with you, I'm an asthmatic. My daughter's asthmatic. This is the only time in my life that being an asthmatic was a little bit beneficial, about a 30% less likelihood of contracting it. But I'm around a lot of people, shaking a lot of hands all the time and leading a body that I think has an important function in state government. And so I actually called my mother, who's 70 years old, who was not able to get a vaccine yet. She did actually get one in Tulsa County this past week, but went through the system and it worked well for her. But I called and said, I kind of feel guilty taking this vaccine. And my mom said, don't feel guilty, because I want you and my grandkids in the house, and you're around a lot more people than I am. I don't want you coming and bringing it to my house and to other people in your district that you visit with that are vulnerable. But I felt it was important for continuity of government. I felt it was important to let Oklahomans and people in my district know that I feel it's safe. And I thought it was important that I could still do my job through this time. I hope that we can continue to roll this out. The health department has been rolling it out at a faster pace than a lot of states. The federal government, I've been disappointed in the CVS and Walgreens rollout. Hopefully we've got some work on that. But the State Department of Health stood up and went quickly to the veteran centers that were not being served. And I was not going to get my vaccine until the veteran centers got theirs. I have to applaud the efforts of Colonel Fry and his team for actually stepping in where the federal government was supposed to be doing it through the contracts with CVS and Walgreens, and they fell flat. And I don't know why that is, but it's unacceptable, and I encourage every Oklahoman to get vaccinated.
Given the lack of mask compliance in this building, with guests so far, why not make a push to get offered the vaccine to everybody, every staff member full-time in this building? Why not lawmakers?
Some staff have gotten vaccinations. I don't know the exact protocol on that. The Chief Operating Officer of the Senate has been dealing with that, and Chief of Staff, I'd be happy to get you some details on it. But I know that some staff have been getting it. I don't know if it's based on age or how that parameter is done. But yes, to the extent that we don't interrupt the rollout to all the populations that have been identified, I'd like to see as many Oklahomans, regardless of where they work or what they do, be able to get vaccinated, because I think it will make a difference.
We got a question from the remote participant. Okay, Sean Murphy, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Senator. I know you said you're still digesting the Loft report, but there were some concerns raised that a number of the expenses, like on things like IT upgrades, the travel center, that those might not qualify, and therefore the feds might try to claw some of that money back. Do you have any concerns that the state could be on the hook for having to pay for some of these things that are tangentially connected to the pandemic?
My hope is that they did their due diligence and they can come back and justify those within the parameters, and we'll see from there. That was always a known risk. Anytime you accept federal money, there's going to be audits eventually. And so I hope and trust that the executive branch did their due diligence and have justifications they can lay out for those, but time will tell.
Thanks.
Hey, thank you for actually putting a profile picture. All these other people don't have pictures with their deal. I appreciate it.
That's only 6 years old.
Glamour shot, huh?
I think that's it, unless there's anybody else here in the room.
All right. Hey, thank you all. Appreciate it.